At this time, I would call the February 19, 2020 meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Chester, Mr. Cho, Ms. McLaughlin,
Here.
Mr. Rush,
Here.
Ms. Uchtman, Mr. Warmbrun,
Here.
Mr. Welch.
Here. I believe we have a quorum. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are none.
At this time, we would take up the minutes from the previous meeting. Have all board members had time to read the minutes?
I move we approve the minutes as presented.
At this time, it's been moved that we approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
We'll do this by roll call. I mean, not by roll call, by voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed by the same sign? The minutes are approved. Are there any communications?
There are none.
Any continued public hearings?
Nope.
All right, then at this time, I would ask anyone in the audience that wishes to be heard to please stand. Do you swear or affirm that any testimony you give will be true and accurate to the best of your belief?
Yes.
Thank you. At this time, I call for hearing ZBA 2020 Major-01, a request by Celeste Choate on behalf of the Urbana Free Library for a major variance to allow parking spaces that are less than the required length at 305 South Race in the B4 Central Business Zoning District. Do we have a staff report?
We do. Before we start, I wanted to introduce the board to Kat Trotter. Kat is an associate planner. She's been with us since September, and she came highly recommended. She was interning with the City of Champaign. She's also getting her master's degree in planning at the University of Illinois and graduating in May.
Yes.
So welcome.
Welcome.
Hi. So I am presenting on case ZBA 2020 Major Variance 01. Celeste Choate, on behalf of the Urbana Free Library, requests a major variance to allow parking spaces that are not as long as the zoning ordinance requires. Celeste and the engineer for the project are here to answer any questions you may have. The Urbana Free Library seeks to repave the staff parking lot as it exists now in a legal non-conforming configuration. The subject property is located at 305 South Race Street, south of the Urbana Free Library and west of the Lincoln Square Mall. The Urbana Free Library is shown toward the top of the screen and the Lincoln Square Mall to the right. The lot is used for staff parking and has been owned by the library since 2013. The lot provides 29 parking spaces in a 90-degree angle configuration. The lot is zoned B4 Central Business District and has been used as a legal non-conforming parking lot for over 25 years. Parking lots are allowed by right in the B4 zoning district. The narrow configuration of the lot, which is 54 feet wide, limits the number of parking spaces possible. Here are some photos of the site. The tulip tree is shown in the middle and in the photo on the right. The library is requesting a variance to repave and restripe the parking lot and continue to have parking stalls shorter than the required length. The parking lot is in poor condition and needs to be repaved. No improvements have been made to the parking lot since the library has owned it. The library has not received any nuisance complaints or reports of accident in the non-conforming parking lot as it exists now. This is a site plan for the parking lot to be repaved as it exists now. The zoning ordinance requires spaces to be 18.5 feet in length when arranged in a 90-degree angle configuration. The parking spaces at 305 South Race Street are currently 16 feet long, 10 feet wide, with a 22-foot wide drive aisle. And you can see that on the site plan here. Granting the major variance would allow the library to repave and restripe the parking lot in its existing configuration with parking spaces that are less than the required length. Without the variance, the parking lot could be repaved with spaces oriented on a 45-degree angle. This would result in the loss of 9 spaces, which is nearly a third of the total of the parking lot, or parking spaces provided. To summarize, staff found that the case meets all the major variance criteria. The lot dimensions, which are 66 feet wide, which includes a 12-foot wide alley on the northern part of the lot, which is shown in the site plan as well, creates practical difficulty for the library. The variance request would allow for repaving and restriping as the parking lot exists now, which functions very well for its purpose. The variance will not serve as a special privilege, and the situation was not created by the applicant. The variance will also not alter the essential character of the neighborhood or create a nuisance. That's because the parking lot has existed in this configuration for over 25 years, and they haven't received any complaints or accident reports. The variance represents the minimum deviation from the zoning ordinance requirements, allowing a 2.5-foot reduction in the required space length. So the Zoning Board of Appeals has the following options in case ZBA 2020 Major Variance 01. You can either forward the major variance to City Council with recommendation to approve, forward the major variance to City Council with recommendation to approve the variance under certain terms or conditions, or deny the major variance request, and if so, can you articulate findings supporting the denial? Staff recommends that the Zoning Board of Appeals recommend the major variance to City Council under the condition that the parking lot generally conforms to the site plan, which is shown in Exhibit C in the staff report, and also as it complies to this slide.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Go ahead.
The tree is going to stay there, correct?
No, the tree will be removed when the parking lot is repaved and restriped.
The tree is gone?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
sure.
Any further questions for staff? Thank you.
Thank you.
Does the petitioner wish to be heard? So it's up to you. Does anyone have any questions for the petitioner? I have one. Is this just a staff lot?
It is just a staff lot, yes.
And it's marked that way so that?
Yes.
No, all right, that's all I,
Yeah, it gets pretty full.
okay. Are there any other questions for the petitioner? All right, thank you. At this time, I'm prepared to call the question for motion.
I move that we forward the major variance to the City Council with a recommendation to approve the variance with the condition that the parking lot generally conform to the site plan in Exhibit C.
It's been moved and seconded. I believe under our laws, with 4 of us here, it will take 3 affirmative votes to forward this on. So may we have a roll call, please?
Okay, Mr. Warmbrun,
Yes,
Mr. Welch,
Yes.
Ms. McLaughlin,
Yes.
Mr. Rush.
Yes.
That motion carries by the necessary vote to forward it on to the City Council at their meeting of,
Hold on one second.
okay.
Kat, do you know? Sorry, I didn't write that down.
Top of my head.
Sorry about that. It will be January 21st, which is a Tuesday due to the,
March.
March 9th.
March
There we go.
9th.
I was going back in time. I was reading the wrong column. Sorry about that.
At their March 9th meeting. Thank you. Is there any old business to be considered?
There is none.
Any new business?
Yes, we have the review of the annual bylaws on the agenda. So the current zoning board of appeals bylaws require that the board reviews the bylaws biannually, which in this case means once every 2 years. So we typically, you'd have to review the bylaws at this meeting, and then you would be able to vote on any proposed changes to the bylaws at next meeting. If there aren't any proposed changes, then there would be just no need to vote on the bylaws. Staff recommends a couple of changes, which I'll describe briefly here. The first would be to add language to allow for remote attendance for zoning board members, and that would be by phone or by something like Skype or other video conferencing software. And this is a suggestion from the city clerk. It's something that the city council has been doing, I think, for 15 or 20 years. They're allowed to attend remotely. There are a couple of nuances to it. First of all, there has to be a physical quorum present at the meeting. So if tonight, for instance, there were only 3 of you here, somebody couldn't call in to make a quorum as a 4th member. But one of the absent members tonight could have called in if this provision were in the bylaws, and then they would have been able to, to weigh in and cast a vote. And that would be, so that's for specific circumstances. So it's illness or disability, if they're out of town for a work-related event or just for work, out of town on city business, or absent due to a family or other emergency. Remote attendance isn't allowed if you're just on vacation and for whatever reason would like to call into a zoning board meeting while you're on vacation. So that's the first change. That's the only substantive change. The second change is just to add a little bit of clarity. So as I said in the opening, the board needs to review laws biannually, and biannually is kind of it's an unclear word. It can mean once every 2 years, which is what it means in the bylaws, but it can also mean twice every year. And really, there's no way to know it. There's really not a good way to know whether you're talking about twice yearly or once every 2 years. So we're just suggesting replacing the phrase at least biannually with the phrase at least once every 2 years. So it's just plain.
Are there any questions for staff regarding?
I have a question.
Yes,
Where
go
is the remote attendance provision located?
So we could put it wherever we would like. I did attach to the last page of the memo, behind the bylaws, there's an attachment that has the specific suggested language, and then we'd probably insert that. So we're doing this for Plan Commission as well, and let's see. I think we'd put it somewhere under Article 3 of the bylaws, so probably on page 2, we would just insert this
okay.
language in there.
So, just a point of nuance, I would be inclined to support actually modifying this language a little bit to say, attend meetings by video conference and leaving out telephone conference, simply because of the fact that I feel like our board deals with so many exhibits and so many cases that require you to visually see what's going on. And we have the technology here provided by the city to do this. We have these cameras, we have the presentation tools. We've been going this long without having any remote participation at all. If we're going to allow remote participation, I'd be much more comfortable with saying it must be by video conference, so that the person who is remotely participating has a better understanding of the room than just by telephone conference, where it's quite frankly easier to check out.
I tend to agree with Adam. You said that this council has had this capability for 15 years, right?
They have, and I've only been present probably twice when they've used it, and I think both times was just by phone, and not Skyping in. But council deals with probably less visual stuff in general than the zoning board.
And I think Adam's point, though, is well taken, that the technology is so much better than it was 15 years ago, when they probably drafted a provision that allowed remote attendance. I think it wouldn't impose an undue burden on our remote attendee to make it by video.
Yeah, I mean, the only concern I could see is if you had a seriously poor internet connection and couldn't video conference in. That's the only concern I think I could see with that. In those cases, we could make sure that that person, I mean, I guess if it's for a family emergency or something, you might not have your packet with you, so you might not have all the visual stuff, so.
And you might, and if that's the case, if you're in the situation where you don't have video, if you don't have stable enough internet connection to do it, then it'd just be like any other time in the past, however many years this board has been going, that you wouldn't be here. So, yeah.
Yes, and again, since a physical quorum has to be present, you certainly don't want to exclude anyone, but again, I think Adam is right that prior to, non-attendance is non-attendance, and if for some reason they can't visually attend, I think that should just be non-attendance. Go ahead, Charlie.
Okay. If you're sick, you can watch it on television. If you're on business, you're going to be really tech savvy, I would assume. So you'd be someplace where you would have internet. I don't know. This language was drawn up by the Illinois State Senate, right?
Right.
And they're the ones that came up with us, giving us the option. I don't know. So it seems to me we might as well just leave the option. But they're also the people that said that if you were on vacation, you couldn't do it.
Correct. Yeah, this language is taken directly from the state statute.
Yeah, to me, it just seems if you're homesick, you should just be able to turn on your TV and listen to what's going on, and then vote. And if you wanted to ask a question, you could ask a question. Now, if you're out of town, I think Skyping would be, like the answer, something like that. So I don't know if you just want to eliminate the telephone. I would just leave it to choice.
I would leave it as well. I can't ever actually imagine taking advantage of this, to be perfectly honest, if there's already a quorum present. But I don't know, assuming we've reviewed the packet, or else we wouldn't be participating. It's hard to imagine a scenario where it's crucial for the video aspect to be there, so much so to remove the language. But also, I mean, does it have to be two-way video? Like, if you're sick, what is, you know what I mean? I don't know.
I guess part of it is, I guess, perhaps I'm wondering then how much we need the non-attendance, the remote participation anyway, if that's the case. I feel like having the community experience of all sitting here together, reviewing the same thing and looking at it together and being able to talk about, hey, did you see that? Did you look at this? Can you please point that out to me again? I feel like that is an important part of the deliberative process of this board. And so that was kind of my thinking when I suggested that we have the video requirement. And as to staying home to watch it on your TV, I don't have cable television service at my home, so I would be videoing it anyway. if you know, I suppose if we were to say, like, if you have your TV turned on and you're then connecting with audio by telephone, that would be kind of be the same thing. But I guess all that being said, then I'm starting to like sort of wonder if we need the remote participation anyway, because we have a quorum tonight, and if you can't be here, you can't be here. We all understand if somebody can't be here. There's been weeks I couldn't be here, so yeah.
I guess I'll just throw out a hypothetical situation where we might want to have somebody remote in. So if somebody on this board, well, you're all experts in something. If there were a case that came up where your expertise would be especially valuable for the other board members to hear, and you had a family emergency, and you could only call in, let's say, Skype isn't working, then in that, it's probably a rare case. It might never happen. But just to have that option available, it would probably be really nice to have that option in that case.
I would agree, and I would just add that I also don't have cable, and my phone connection isn't amazing
Right,
in my
yeah.
house, so it's
Okay.
like I
Fair enough.
don't mind the option of just
Yeah.
the telephone part. Given that we'll probably rarely use it, and we're really including it just to have some flexibility, I feel like why not keep it?
And is there anything other than just limitation on you can't use it on a vacation to keep this provision from being abused? That somebody were to say, I have a job in another town that I'm going to have to call into every meeting instead of actually be here. I still want to remain on the board or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how we'd handle a situation like that. I don't know that would, if that would come up, but
Right.
since I started playing hypotheticals,
Yeah,
I think it's fine to
I guess-
entertain some of those, yeah. And I can't recall off the top of my head if I mean, we do have rules on attendance where if you miss a certain number of meetings, then you can be removed from the board. I'm not sure how this remote provision would factor into that. I can look into that since we
Yeah.
don't have to vote on this.
I would be
At
willing.
this meeting.
I think I'd be willing to support this so long as remote participation does not count towards in-person attendance. As
And
long
since
as
it's not a quorum, I would assume that
Right.
would be the case.
yeah, so if you still have to meet the obligation of the attendance requirements, or else you need to resign from the board, then I would be inclined to support this.
Okay, I can get an answer for you by next month.
Okay, thanks.
Did you want to say something? Go
Yeah, I
ahead,
want to say
Charles.
one more thing. To me, this is designed for people who are elected to elected offices, who have an interest in being at every meeting and representing a zone or a ward or something that they're responsible for those people. Everybody here is responsible to the entire city. And we're not elected, we're appointed. And it would be nice, I guess, if there was a controversial issue where one vote might sway the outcome, that if somebody was sick or knew they were going to be out of town, that they might be able to do this. But to me, that'd be the only advantage to having it at all. And then, what is the attendance rules? I've never heard that before. Do you know that? Because it should be in our bylaws.
Yeah, it should, and I don't recall where they are. Let's see.
I don't remember either.
I'm not seeing it.
Since we're looking at the bylaws, I have another question. In, unless you're still looking for that.
Well, I'm still looking, but
Okay.
you can,
In Article 2, and I believe that we've had to have things pushed back before because of this. Article 2, number 4, it says, like, basically cases have published in the local newspaper, public notices of meetings or hearings as required by law. So public notice law, is that a state law or city law, city ordinance, or?
it's a state requirement.
Okay. I'm just curious if, are our bylaws requiring local newspaper, or are there other avenues of disseminating information now that can be used? Because personally, I don't receive a print copy of the newspaper. Publishing in the newspaper does nothing for me, but I can keep up with city business in other ways, city news in other ways.
Right. So I don't think there's anything in here that would preclude further publication through other media. But I am pretty certain that it's a state requirement that it be published in a generally circulating local public
Yeah.
paper.
That's correct.
Got it.
Yeah, there's still behind the 21st century methods of communication.
Yeah.
And as more and more newspapers disappear, they may have to make changes in that law. But Kevin's right, it is a state requirement that it be published in a newspaper.
Sure, the newspaper lobbyists make sure it doesn't change for a while.
You got one more question? Yeah, go ahead.
I would like to look again at Article 3, Section 4. It's, public hearings may be held by less than a quorum of the zoning board. However, such public hearings shall be continued until a quorum is present, at which time a vote may be taken. To me, that's a waste of time. If we don't have a quorum and we sit here for anywhere from 10 minutes to hear a case or 2 hours to hear a case, we have to rehear the case when we get a quorum, which is usually the next meeting. We don't really sit here and listen to things hoping somebody will show up an hour from now or something, so.
Well, I mean,
Isn't that more for the public, though, if there are people here to rearrange their schedule to, like, what's the word? Protest or support something?
Yeah, that's been the argument that everybody says, if somebody comes in from out of town or
Right.
something that can't get back here. But to me, they have to come back and re-testify again because the people who aren't here for the quorum didn't hear any of the testimony.
But it's recorded.
it is recorded and it
Although I
is
don't recall
admitted.
ever doing this, but, I
Well,
mean, we usually would just continue it if we didn't.
I think that out of courtesy, we always have reopened testimony on a continuation, at least the ones I remember, especially the controversial one that I remember.
the only one I remember
technicality-
was that we listened to the issue.
The garage.
Because the staff wanted a continuance, but
Right.
we listened to the
Oh,
evidence
yeah.
of the people
Oh,
that
right.
were there, but we had a quorum that night.
No,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
true, that's
we
true,
did.
okay.
So what I'm saying here is you would listen, three of us would sit here and listen to these people, and then we continue it to the next meeting, because it was our fault we didn't have a quorum, but all the testimony would have to be reintroduced.
I don't think it would, though. I think technically, we could just call a vote as soon as it happens, because the testimony's already been given, and the members who are not here have had an opportunity to either read the testimony or watch the video archive.
Well, there's no provision that I know of to watch a video archive or read the testimony. I mean, the minutes are not the testimony.
Well, I mean, you could watch this meeting on Urbana TV, or Urbana's website.
I suppose so. So, you know,
I do think that Ms. McLaughlin is correct in that we have this in there so that if people take the time to show up to a meeting that's been advertised, and it can be hard to to find out if something's re-advertised. If we find out that night that we aren't going to have a quorum, if something comes up, folks aren't going to get the message, and so they should be able to come out, state their opinion, and they might not be able to make it to the next meeting. So their input is taken, it's added to the public record, and then it's just continued to the next meeting of the board.
Well, I lost on this 8 years ago when we did this, so all I'm going to say is, to me, the people are already here that are going to come back to the next meeting. They're going to be witnessing the fact that we're not going to listen to what they have to say that particular night. We're going to tell them, come back in a month, or come back, we'll have a special meeting in 2 weeks or something. But to me, there needs to be something that says that the people on the board get the information from this meeting if it's going to be part of the official record. So you'd have to say, you have to sit and watch the video of this, or you have to do this, or otherwise those people shouldn't be allowed to vote. And then you're complicating things because you'd have a quorum, but you're denying the people who weren't at the other meeting to vote. So, and it really has never come up that I know of. So I'm done with that.
I mean, I think that's a fair point about maybe stipulating that voting members have to somehow read the record or watch the video or whatever. But I do think in order to support any member of the public that comes out for any reason, that it should be a protected time and place, that they were told ahead of time that they are able to voice their opinion.
Yeah, I think maybe if I don't know if this needs to be in the bylaws, but maybe the staff could make a note that if there is ever a case that is continued, if you could include in our packet or our e-packet a link to video testimony, that sort of thing. I think that if there ever is a case that comes up like this, it would be essential to have the availability of that for the board members who weren't able to attend. 'Cause, I mean, I definitely agree that if we find out someone gets sick and they can't make it, so there's not a quorum, I don't want to turn away members of the public who came to talk to us. But, yeah.
Can you just run that by the lawyers maybe to see what they think about,
To see if we could add something here, or
yes, that would cover the people who weren't here while it was discussed at the first meeting without a quorum, that are here when we do have a quorum to vote on it.
Mhm.
If they think that they should view this video, view it some way or another prior to voting on it.
Are public comments part of the minutes?
Yes.
I mean, in that sense, aren't we kind of required to review the minutes at the very least?
Yeah, but the minutes aren't going to show you the emotions and these
Sure.
other things that you
Yeah.
guys wanted on the
That's
last
fair.
point and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, the minutes are a summary.
they are, and the minutes don't include a verbatim.
Okay,
Sure.
sure.
I mean, some meetings would be a short novel probably if
Right.
we did that. So
And it doesn't say, a lot of them don't say so-and-so question,
Sure.
It just says so-and-so said,
Mhm.
that type of thing.
okay, yeah, I can talk to our legal folks and see if there's something we could add to section 4 there, just to require the board members to review the video, and for staff
Yeah.
to provide that link.
That'd be fantastic, yeah.
And there's one other thing in here that I'm not seeing right now, but it was, okay, it's on page 5. under section 4, number 3 there up at the top where it says all public input may be limited to topics germane to these described on the agenda. So this is under the audience participation section, I believe, isn't it? Okay, so we're allowing these people in number 1, 5 minutes to speak. That's the only time limit we have, and that's in the audience participation section, not the case discussions, correct? That's the way you interpret that, because we've always interpreted that way.
That's what it looks like, yes.
And then, so when you get back to point 3, we're giving the audience the opportunity to speak again about what we've already discussed and voted on in the whole meeting? Or should it just be whatever they want to say to us?
Yeah, I think I see your point here.
Because we've already discussed everything on the agenda by the time we get to the audience participation.
Well, so it doesn't say that they must be limited. It says they may be limited, so I
Mhm.
feel like that's a discretion of the chair. So I mean, it doesn't say, yeah, it doesn't say that they are only limited to the topics there, but I guess the chair could say, please keep your comments to stuff that's on the agenda. I'm not sure why why that would be the case, though.
Is that just
Um,
like a backup in case someone is rambling irrelevantly?
Perhaps.
Okay.
Harvey, you've been chair for a while. Have you had to invoke this? No?
No, I,
Do you remember
Usually
any
they-
audience participation? I don't.
well,
At that point, after we're done with everything?
oh,
Audience participation, like right now, if there was somebody in the audience that wanted to talk to
No,
us, you know?
I think usually we wait and wait and wait and let everybody say what they have to say. And yes, I don't remember after a vote, no. Well, why don't you address these questions with legal, and we can address this again in our next meeting when we'll have hopefully more of the board here.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. We have no audience, so I will go to staff report. Is there a staff report?
We do have an audience member.
No, that's the cameraman. Are you not the city employee cameraman? Oh, I'm sorry. Are you wanting to say anything to the board?
I wasn't planning to, but I just happen to know that the public speaking rules allow for 5 minutes. It's set at the city council level and applies to all boards and subcommittees. By a majority vote, you guys can allow the person to speak for more than 5 minutes.
Yeah, usually,
It's written on the city clerk's
usually we don't enforce that to the 5 minutes you're done. Try to give some flexibility.
someone wants to speak for a half hour and
Well, at that point, yeah, you just kind of have to know when to intercede, so.
majority vote by the board can allow the person to speak for more than 5 minutes.
All right. So we did have an audience participation.
Doubt that will happen.
Now do we have a staff report?
Just briefly, you'll recall the Plasma Center, the Stow Group Plasma Center freestanding sign variance that you discussed, I believe, at your last meeting, past council. That's it for staff report.
All right. We're now to the study session. Do we want to wait for this? Because I believe the referred to board member is not here tonight, is she?
And she's not on Skype.
So,
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, because you're right. I think that Ms. Euchman requested a study session
Yeah.
on this notion of legal precedent in the
Yeah.
cases that the board discusses. So I think pushing that off till the next meeting that she's here would be a great idea.
So I move that we continue this study session item to our next board meeting. Thank you.
Can we make sure we have the video of that to send to everyone?
I'll do that even though it's not in the bylaws.
All right. At this time, hearing no one else or nothing else, I move that we adjourn.